That person's not, they're not going to create another department or another division. That's the point.
I'll take that later to see Brian.
Yeah.
And I talked to Jim, and they're a little different.
Huh?
I talked to Jim at the bar.
Yeah.
It was very
No,
different.
Brian
I talked to
printed
Brian a
it, so
couple
we
days
have it in
after.
front of us.
She didn't think it was a 7 o'clock.
You remember the last time they developed a position
Here we go,
like that,
Buzz.
and I stood up with Tom, and he shot him down.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September 29th, 2015 Planning Board meeting. Falmouth Planning Board. First item on the agenda tonight is the minutes of September 15th.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of the minutes for September 15, 2015, and September 22nd, 2015.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Wait,
Excuse me.
I did find, I reread them again today, and I did find a typo on the minutes of September 15th. Is that something that...
I think I corrected that, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I will double check that because I have transmitted them to the
Not
department
important.
yet,
So-
but I will make sure of that.
And you got my corrections from the
Yes, I do.
previous.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, do we have a recording secretary tonight?
Hopefully it's on our way. Corey and I will take those. I have the motion of Paul Dryer, seconded by Ralph Hurd, so voted, so.
Good observation,
Go for
Ralph. I missed that.
I wonder if the 7 o'clock meeting last week threw her off.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe.
Next item is approval, not required plans. We do have one.
Let's see it.
Applicant is Daniel and Lisa Gorin to combine two lots into one for the purposes of zoning, assessing, and building at 194 Seaput Road. BSS Design. For the applicant,
Thank you. I'm Tom Bunker with BSS Design. It's self-explanatory. I have two lots on Seapit Road, fronts on Seapit River. There's a house on one of the lots, but they do want to combine them to
159 and
create
160.
one lot
Yeah.
for zoning and assessing. It's worded that way because these are land court lots. So we do this and file a covenant with record a covenant with the registry, and the plan is filed with the town. So that's why it's worded that way. It's not strictly combined with land court, but as far as the town is concerned, it's combined for those purposes. And it can only be used for one dwelling.
Mr. Chair.
yes, Paul.
I had a comment. I had a hard time orienting myself with the locus map because I don't see Rivers View Road, and it looks like it's skewed to Charles River Road, and Seapit Road. So I was having a hard time orienting myself at that location.
It's just down near
Put the
the
arrow north the
peninsula.
right way, and it'll make sense, I think, if you turn the plan.
It's north.
No, it's oriented
See, Seapit River's right here.
roughly the same.
Right.
And
The
this
locus
is-
map is north straight up, and the
This says
north on the
Seapit Road,
plan
and this is
off to
private
the
way,
side a little
so-
bit.
Seapit Road, I think, is farther over. Oh,
Near the end of the peninsula.
Yeah, it's at the end. So the existing house is going to stay?
We've actually gone through Conservation and Board of Appeals to rebuild it slightly larger. There will be, a rebuilt house in roughly that same location. They're actually using the same foundation with a little bit of expansion toward the road.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to ask, do we have any recommendations from the staff on this?
Right, it's not a subdivision by definition, it is simply eliminating a lot line on a recorded plan. And recorded lines are forever, it's simply for zoning purposes, and I recommend you can endorse an equivalent record.
I move that we endorse the plan of Mr. and Mrs. Gorin to combine two lots into one.
Second?
I would second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you.
The next items on our agenda are zoning articles, a public hearing. Paul, do we have any notices on these?
In accordance with Section 5, Chapter 48, Massachusetts General Laws, Article 43 of the Falmouth zoning bylaw, the Falmouth Planning Board shall conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, September 29th at 6:30 PM, Town Hall, 59 Town Hall Square, Falmouth, Mass. 02540, to discuss proposed amendments to the Falmouth zoning bylaw. 8 abutters were notified by regular mail, and this was published in the Falmouth Enterprise on September 11th, September 18th, and September 25th, 2015.
Thank you. The first one is the flood hazard overlay district. We have discussed this at length and reviewed it with the selectmen, and here it is ready to go. Anyone? I'm going to go public. Oh, Ralph?
Right, on the first,
No?
It's the public hearing tonight.
This one.
I guess we're just supposed to
It's
listen to
the
the public.
public hearing
Ralph,
tonight,
sorry.
not ours. We discuss it next week or whenever.
oh,
Give a
yeah, okay.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Anyone from the public have a comment on this article?
Tom Bunker, BSS Design. Actually, I haven't heard your previous discussions about it, but I have what should be a companion article to this. When you're building a house in a flood zone and people want to get above 2.5 stories, we've had this on at least 2 occasions, the definition of story in your zoning should be changed. Right now, a story is defined roughly as an enclosed level of the building that is roughly more than 4 feet below grade would constitute a story. Now, in a flood zone, you cannot have any level that's below grade. What you end up with is perhaps a story, if the flood zone is high enough, you might end up with a full story that could be used as a garage under, and then people want to go 2 full floors above that, which, according to your zoning, would then be a 3-story house. Eladio has gotten around this somewhat, or said, well, it's okay to do it that way, but I think to make the paperwork clearer, your definition should be changed such that in a flood zone, if you have a level that's to be used only for parking, storage, and building access, which are the three uses that are allowed in a flood zone, then that should not be considered a story for the purpose of building height. And then you could decide if people can do a full 2 or even 2.5 stories above that. But that, I think it would be helpful to do that also, to clear up that that one thing in the definition of story, in addition to allowing more than 35 feet, if you're going to do that.
Brian, how does this measure up with base flood elevation?
Could you say thank you?
Thank you, okay.
And if you could send us an email to that effect, that'd be great.
That by itself has nothing to do with the base flood elevation. But if you're going to allow buildings to be taller, or even if you're not going to allow buildings to be taller, we've had these 2 cases where buildings did not exceed 35 feet.
Have you read this article?
I haven't had a chance to read that yet. And that's one thing, but making this other zoning change definition of story would be helpful as it relates specifically to flood zones.
Okay. Yes.
Why can't I shout at you? Nancy Hayward, Precinct 5. Now, maybe if I had read this carefully, I would know the answer to this. I'll confess I haven't read it carefully. I would like to know if there is a height definition for a story.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Bob Dolan, Mayflower Street. I'd like to know why you have to go above 35 feet in the flood zone. Basically, you have about 12 feet per story, even if you're doing 3 floors, if we're counting that basement. What I'm concerned about is historically 35 feet throughout New England has been the norm, and now we're going to change that norm. If you're on Surf Beach, you can actually look down, you see a bunch of houses that they go up and down like that, whereas people have really tweaked the height limit already. And to expand it another 5 feet, we're going to get a Miami effect where you just will be blocking out vistas, because anyone who's going to buy a lot on the ocean is going to maximize their investment, and they'll go as high as they can. So I really don't understand why we need to go over 35 feet. And just because someone wants, if 35 feet is the maximum, and someone wants to go 2.5 stories, and that's over the 35 feet, well, they can do 2 stories. And that's the zoning bylaw. So to change it, I think, is a major step, and it'll have a great effect on the town. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Close the hearing? Close it?
For the purposes of this article?
Yes, this article. This article, okay. We'll close the hearing on this one. The next one is rezoning former town landfill located at Blacksmith Shop Road. This is a selectmen's article. Anyone here from the selectmen?
Right.
The selectmen's article, anyone here to speak on it? Peter, you here to speak on it?
You are now.
Yes, Peter McCarthy. I guess I'll come in this one as the town engineer. I was asked, sent an email this past week to see if I could come to the meeting tonight to discuss the article, to see if there's any questions on the rezoning of the landfill. Basically, I have some pretty good knowledge of the facility. It's basically 53 acres. The whole back portion of that they're looking to rezone, and possibly the installation of the solar array is what they're looking at, is approximately 47 and a half acres, right in that range. And the front portion is about 7.5 acres. The front portion of the lot is the recycling center, the recycling area. That's where the swap shop is. We do all our mattress recycling, have the whites recycling, C and D, that area up there. So that area, by the plans that I've seen, does not look like it would be affected by this new array. One thing that, if this did go through, is would want to be looking at access to the rear of the lot. Because to get to the rear lot at this time, with the layout of the land, the topography of the land, the only way to get into that back area is basically down the driveway to the waste management facility. So they'd be able to go into the lower tier, come up to the upper tier, and then be able to go out into the back. So would have to have an open driveway or an open easement area that they could be able to get to. It should not impede our operations. We are currently, on a side note, we are currently working with the DEP to do some site repairs up to the front area of that facility. You probably heard, the front area, the last couple of years we've been working. We haven't been able to do anything up there. We haven't got DEP approval yet, but we're working on that. We're getting closer.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Michael Galasso. I'm the chairman of the Falmouth EDIC. For the last 3 years, the EDIC has had a memorandum of understanding with the town to look at potential reuses of the closed landfill. We've held a number of public meetings over the 3 years period and determined that the highest and best use would be to develop a solar array which would produce energy that would go to the town to power town buildings at a reduced cost from what we currently pay. And the article in front of you is to rezone to light industrial C, which is the one zoning designation in the town that allows ground-mounted solar arrays. So we would kindly ask for your support as you deliberate and discuss the article, I guess, next week. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else on this one issue? Okay, we'll close this portion of the hearing. And the next hearing is the amendment of Chapter 240-13, definition, ground-mounted solar voltaic array. Is there someone here to speak on this issue?
Actually asked if they could put up a couple of slides. Is that possible? Is the computer?
She's out here.
Do you want me to help? 5-minute recess, Mr. Chairman.
Is that okay?
Yes, we'll recess for 5 minutes while we get prepared.
We'll run outside and play.
Tripod, I guess.
set. We're reconvening. Go ahead, Megan.
I'm Megan Amsler, and I am the chair of the Falmouth Energy Committee. We were interested in putting forth an article that would actually allow ground-mounted solar in light industrial A, B, public use and municipal use zones without a special permit. One of the things I wanted to point out is that if you look at Mass General Law 40, Section A, I think it is, there really is sort of like a sense of ambiguity about needing a special permit for large solar arrays. The Mass Department of Energy Resources has a model bylaw to help towns get clarity on whether or not they need. It's basically saying that the DOER's model bylaw is for communities that want to become a green community, but saying that if you have an array over 250 kW, you do not need a special permit, because they feel that that's sort of where it gets into this area where it might be construed as a large system. This is something like the proposed capped landfill project is definitely over 250 kW. Anyway, the Energy Committee is just interested in seeing ground-mounted solar, parking canopies, that sort of thing, as a use for developed land. If you look at how much the industrial land and municipal use land, I think light A, B, and C accounts for 1.4% of the total land use in Falmouth. And if you add the municipal and public use, it gets up to, that's 11.25 or something land use. So percentage-wise, it's quite small. We advocate for having solar on places where there is development already. Like look at the industrial park and places where if there's residential use, there may be parking lots that are already existing, where a parking canopy could actually be a great asset for providing shade, potentially in the future having electric vehicle plug-in, that sort of thing. So that was the gist of my presentation to you guys with some visuals, which you have to use your imagination. Any questions?
Well, so, I have a question.
Not allowed to ask questions.
Oh, no?
You got questions?
Yeah, for clarity.
Yeah. When you mentioned the canopy, would
Yeah.
that actually be ground mounted, or would that be a roof?
Parking canopies are typically ground mounted.
Oh,
You
because
do like-
it is itself the structure.
Exactly.
I see.
Yep. Fully engineered. Lots of them are, you can buy them off the shelf, so to speak. They come with engineer stamps and that sort of thing.
I see. And so how would that article be presented? Will that be a petitioner's article from yourself?
From the Energy Committee?
It is. It's
Yeah.
here. It's published in your package.
Okay.
It's all set,
Okay.
ready to go.
All right.
Any other comments? Yes, Nancy. Nancy, you should sit up front. We could hand you the mic.
I don't know much about ground-mounted solar arrays. So what I hear here is an effort to have no special permit required, if I understood correctly. I will say that we have the wind turbine issue, and this resolves around a special permit. And at this particular moment, unless there's some overwhelming article discussion of this, I can't see what the hazard is about having to request a special permit. That's one question I want to ask. And then the other question is more practical. There are solar panels, and I believe I'm correct on this, in the parking area for the hockey building. Is that called ground-mounted, or what do you call putting solar panels somewhere like that? And when you're talking about a ground-mounted solar array, how many feet up off the ground are you talking about having these solar panels that are in ground-mounted panels? And hopefully, someone can answer. Mr. Chairman, do I direct this to Ms. Amsler, or through you, would you ask her the question about what exactly is a ground-mounted solar array?
We've heard the question, and we'll bring it up.
Thank you. Sir, Mr. Chairman, are you suggesting that I need to keep track of some future meeting of the planning board to get this answer, or?
No, I'm suggesting this is a public hearing, and what we do is listen. And then next week, we have discussion, and all the questions that are brought up get discussed. But the public part is now, and that is why we're here. So you get a chance to bring up your question, and we have it. Are there any other questions or public comments on ground-mounted solar photovoltaic arrays? Anybody else? Okay. Well, we'll close the public hearing on this issue, and we'll be bringing it back in the future.
Motion to take it under advisement.
Did that?
So moved.
All three.
Yes. I would second the motion to take all three under advisement.
All in favor of taking the flood hazard overlay district, the rezoning of the landfill, and amending of 240-13 definition of ground-mounted solar photovoltaic arrays under advisement? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. The next is discussion. The first item we're discussing tonight is the accessory apartment bylaw. We had asked Brian to take a look at our old one and start recommending changes, and that's what's in everyone's package. Yes?
I haven't gone through it, both versions that were sent to us. I like the fact that it's a little more concise, that we've taken away some of the restrictions to make it a little more user-friendly. And I think it's a good start for this one. I did, however, think of something, and this had to do with having worked on Glenwood Ave, where there are houses along Glenwood Ave that I believe were probably garages for houses on Walker Street at one time. And so I was wondering if we want to explore the possibility of allowing a garage to be turned into an accessory unit on a piece of property. I don't know if anybody has thought of that. I'd like to hear the board's thoughts on that. If we'd be opening up a can of worms that we don't want to open up, or so I'm just throwing that out there.
Brian, do you have any?
So just so the board knows, that's precisely the language you see here in your strikeout version, in your first paragraph. You see, I've eliminated the requirement
Right.
of residing within the dwelling, and you can use either the dwelling or an existing accessory structure.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So
I
that's-
skipped
that's-
right over it.
that's
Well,
what-
it was crossed out, that's why I skipped
So
it.
the underline is added, so we've actually
That's what I
offered that
thought.
as a suggestion for the board's consideration.
Okay.
But at the same time, the other percentages and whatnot would still hold.
What I've done is I've taken away the percentages. You'll see
You've taken away
in paragraph 2.
Oh, put the square footage.
You simply have a square footage. The max would be 750 and the minimum would be 450.
So-
And we don't get into percentages.
Okay.
In other words, I might have a 5,000 square foot house, that gives me a 1,500 square foot, whatever. In this instance, I might have a smaller home, and I want to just put an accessory apartment in it. We're just going to set a ceiling and a floor. That's what paragraph 2 does.
Okay, that was a good question. Think of, yes, Paul?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Bob. I like the idea that it's simplified, and rather than using percentages, use like a 30% of the building. I think it's much better to use the square footage, because there's always an argument of 30% of what area. So I think it takes out some of the redundancy and inaccuracies of the previous draft.
I have,
Yes, sir.
Ralph's already waiting. Go
No,
ahead.
that's all right. I'll wait.
I go left.
Okay, so it seems like there's something missing at item number 4 in the original draft version. It says if the subject lot is within a water resource protection district or coastal pond overlay district, the total number of bedrooms shall not exceed 1 per 10,000 square feet of total area unless served by municipal sewer? Is that,
Unless you put a period after area.
but I was going to suggest that it kind of excludes a lot of the Mara Vista area by the dimensional requirements.
Well, the question then comes, you want to simply eliminate the coastal pond overlay district for that area because it's now on the sewer, is my suggestion to the board. Once the sewer is completed, there's no reason to have the coastal pond overlay for there little pond area. So you go back to town meeting and essentially delete it.
Except for stormwater management, would that still be?
The coastal pond overlay district speaks to nitrogen principally from septic systems. So once you're on a public sewer, there's really no reason for you to be burdened by regulations that no longer have any applicability.
And that really doesn't have any effect on the stormwater management anyway, right?
Correct. That would be my recommendation to the board. There are other areas that hopefully soon will be sewered, but in the meantime, my sense is town meeting's going to want to retain that protection for those areas.
Right. But if that change doesn't happen, I mean, that could be another longer term solution. So in the short term, if we just said unless served by municipal sewer or some words to that effect, then we wouldn't be excluding that area. It might be a short term fix until we do eliminate that coastal pond overlay district.
Ralph, you're up next.
Well, I'd like to just, could you just clarify what the language changes here?
I'm suggesting that at the end of number 4,
Right,
it says unless served by municipal sewer.
Served by municipal sewer, okay.
Keep in mind, we're going to have another shot at this. We're not drafting
Right.
finally. We're going to, the object tonight was for Brian to lay out things for us to discuss.
Yep.
And then we're going to put it out, and it'll eventually come back to us as a warrant article, and there'll be another public hearing. And I encourage anyone that's interested to stay tuned and get copies of this or watch the hearing again, and bring up your questions when we come back to this issue, which we will.
Okay.
Okay, this is the beginning. Yes, Pat?
Okay, I'm ready to,
Now you're ready.
now I'm ready to make my comment.
Okay.
In number 1, owner occupied for a period of 7 months. Now, you look at that and you think, is that because a lot of people want to maintain residency here, but go somewhere else for 5 months? And it seemed to me, and it's in the original one, I know that. It seems that if we're emphasizing the fact that we want the owner to be around to avoid any issues with a with an accessory apartment, it seems to me as though 7 months is short. I would rather see it be 8 or 9 months at least. Then, I guess my question about, on number 4 also dovetails with what Doug said, because I wondered why we had removed the municipal sewer paragraph and so forth, so I'm agreed that that should be reinstated. And then on second page, number 8, it references 24161. Well, if you look up 24161, it says that that the accessory apartment must be on the same lot as the owner building, so I guess there's, considering the fact that you could have an accessory apartment in a different building, like a standalone garage, and you turn that into an accessory apartment. It says you can also cannot alter the character of the premise, and also you cannot impair the neighborhood. So those are really sort of a broad brush on what you cannot do, or I guess what you must comply with, I guess is what it's saying. So it sounds like the reference to 24161 is appropriate, and I would just say that if people don't want to look up 24161.
Is it 24161 or 24116?
It says 161, 24161.
161, okay.
Yeah, and I looked it up, so I'd be in favor of leaving that in there. That's all I have, thanks.
Okay. Yes, Pat?
This has to do with, Ralph would like to see that the owner must be there 8 or 9 months rather than the 7. But when I looked at the Lexington bylaw, there's something that makes an awful lot of sense in there to me too, because some people may want to relocate for a year or something like that, and they couldn't do that and have an accessory. So Lexington says an owner of a property containing an accessory apartment who is to be absent for a period of less than 2 years may rent the owner's unit as well as the second unit during the temporary absence, provided A, written notice thereof shall be made to the building commissioner on a form prescribed by him. B, the owner shall be resident on the property for at least 2 years prior to and between such temporary absences. We do have a community that scientists go somewhere else for a period of time and wouldn't necessarily be in residence for 8 or 9 months if they were to do a sabbatical someplace else. And I wouldn't want to see that them precluded from putting in an accessory apartment. So I think maybe we need to have that put in too, as well as the
Have
Yes.
one more. Does anybody else feel like the 750 square foot maximum is a little too restrictive?
I mean, restrictive meaning,
I mean, what if somebody has a space that's 800 feet or 900 feet? I mean, I don't know why we really have to cut it off there.
it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, though. That's how I look at it. I mean, it's supposed to be an apartment. The average apartment isn't more than 700 feet, 600 to 700 feet. I mean, it's supposed to be accessory, isn't it?
Doug, I understand your point, but I thought it gains us, the language helps us in areas where we have too small structures, and you can't get, the 30% was stopping it from happening altogether, and there may be a structure on the site, so, you know, we've got a give and take here, and I think the idea, I'm open to either, but the other idea is the neighborhood character and whatnot have to be careful with it, so I think that, I believe it's a balanced approach doing it this way, but we can discuss it further and listen to other comments.
How many real specific reason.
I understand, no.
Just wanted to bring it up.
The goal here is to, we had a bylaw that no one could use. We're trying to make it easier.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're trying to do. That's the whole purpose of this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to ease it up a little bit.
Now, is this going to be a special permit issue? Or can a homeowner who kind of looks at this and says, geez, I would like to hire a contractor and turn my second floor into an apartment, can they just hire an architect, a contractor, and then pull a building permit and do this without having to go before any boards or hearings? Or,
Right now, it's still a special permit.
Right.
That's a good question.
So,
That sounds like it would stay, especially if we have to interpret the neighborhood character. I don't see how you could do that without having a hearing.
People will just start making two-family homes. I mean, you know, you gotta be able to control that.
I would think the building permit would control that. You know, if the application, if part of the application is that section of the bylaw, 24161, and you're filling out an application that everything comports to that and this.
You're going to have to submit plans
Yeah.
to get your permit.
And so it would be up to the building
It would be up to the
commissioner
building
then
commissioner.
to make that determination if we didn't make it a special permit. Let's,
Yep.
we can continue to discuss that.
Yeah. I'm trying
Right,
to.
I think that's a good question we should keep on the table.
And the special permit may be a big part of the reason why it's not being used.
Right, that's why I think we have to
Right.
have that, we have to think about that a little bit, because it just opens up, it's very difficult, in some cases, it can be very hard to get a special permit, but it might be a good thing, so it's something we need to discuss and be careful with.
161.
Let's see if I can find you some examples in other communities of a by right accessory apartment.
Right, there was some kind of control on it that would give us comfort to that issue.
I mean, I can understand why, with the special permit, where you do have hearings, that neighbors might have concerns, and that would be a chance for them to air their concerns. But if it's something that doesn't seem to be onerous, and that town meeting agrees to, I think it's something we really should discuss in depth.
It opens up appeals, well, you can still appeal a decision too, so
Yeah,
you gotta think about it.
yeah.
The goal here is to make it more usable, but I think those are good discussion items.
I believe you can actually appeal a regular
You
building
can,
permit.
I just realized a decision could be, a building permit could be appealed,
Right.
so,
We know that.
yeah, for a couple of years, actually, it's kind of crazy.
And the issuance of building permits is a matter of public record,
Yep.
so.
Okay,
So I have, you want to look back at the duration of owner occupancy, and you're looking at perhaps incorporating the Lexington model for sabbaticals and leave of absences and whatnot. We'll take a look at the municipal sewer issue again, to try to find us some by right examples, or some site plan-driven examples, or simply an administrative review, perhaps. And we'll try again next week. See what we can come up with.
so I would want to encourage, this was posted on our agenda, and I thought there'd actually be more housing interested groups here, and hopefully they'll get a chance to come again.
Oh,
Do you have a comment on it?
We're only looking for ones that are not here.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Michael Galasso, the chairman of the EDIC, but I'm here representing myself tonight and not the EDIC, although the EDIC board members recognize the importance of housing to our economic stability and growth. And I participated during the local planning subcommittee meetings discussion on housing that we had over the last few years. So I welcome this opportunity. I know this has been in front of you as a draft a couple of times. We haven't seen the draft, maybe it's now available online, but I'd like to offer 3 points tonight for you to consider as you're continuing drafting the ordinance or the bylaw. As we know, many towns and cities have adopted or revised their accessory dwelling unit bylaws as a way to increase the number of units in areas that they want to promote growth, and in some instances to increase the number of affordable units in their communities. So what I would suggest that you look at as you revise the draft or you create a new bylaw for our town is that we approach this as a pilot project and designate just certain geographic areas in our community where ADUs would be accepted, and that we first see how it would work, how well it works, or maybe some things that we need to modify before we allow accessory dwelling units in a wider area of our community. Because of how long it may take to permit and construct new accessory dwelling units, I'd suggest a 3 to 5 year pilot program just in selected geographic areas that we want to promote additional density and have the services to support it. My second point would be we need to make sure, as you were just discussing, that we have well-designed accessory dwelling units and that they're designed into the fabric of our existing neighborhoods. We should establish design guidelines. There are many out there that have already been developed. And the bylaw should require design review for all proposed accessory dwelling units, but a little different type of design review than what we currently have. I'd suggest that the town consider retaining a qualified architect selected by a RFP process and to be paid by each ADU applicant, who would then be responsible for design review of the proposed ADU to ensure that it meets the bylaw and design guidelines. So we sort of take it out of the long process, that we select a well-qualified architect to review the plans, make comments, and make sure that it complies with some form of design guidelines. I think we need to be concerned whether people just start building inappropriate, and I'm very much in favor of accessory dwelling units, but we want to make sure that it works and it works well, I think, before we spread it out throughout the whole community. My third point I'd like to make is that we should be looking at providing some incentives, such as low-interest loans from that town's affordable housing trust to those who want to construct new or legalize existing non-conforming ADUs if they agree to restrict occupancy of the accessory dwelling units to be affordable to working individuals and young families in our community. Sort of a carrot out there that if you want to build one, but you have to rent restrict it, income restrict it, that you may be able to qualify for a low-interest loan from a housing trust. So finally, this is a complicated and very important process, and I thank the chairman and the board for bringing this forward. I would suggest that maybe you look at forming a small working group consisting of others who are interested in housing in our community, members from the Planning Board, Affordable Housing Committee, EDIC, and others, to help shape the bylaw before it comes back to you, the selectmen, and eventually town meeting. So thank you very much for your time.
Yes, Pat?
Jim, you and Bob will, I think, remember, and Michael was sitting in on these meetings, that we had talked about limiting the initial application of such a bylaw to where we wanted to encourage density. And we had talked about particularly, say, Main Street back up to Jones Road and allowing that to happen there and see what happens as a trial, rather than, because it's so universally applicable throughout town, the accessory. And this is a discussion we, as the whole board, have to have. This is something we discuss. So I'm just underscoring what Mike said.
The converse of that, though, one of the reasons why we didn't put that in is we wanted to get more of them.
Exactly.
And the whole idea is to take restrictions away instead of adding more. So that's the
I know.
balance we have here. These are all things we brought up, but we'll consider. But I was in favor of making them easier to do and not have them be restricted, income restricted, just restrict them on size and the other. So we're going to have that discussion further. There's two sides to every argument here. Yes, Ralph?
Well, I just like Mr. Galasso's point about offering incentives, because this is a piece of paper, and, it will allow certain things that weren't allowed before, but what else can we hang out there as an incentive for people to do this? Maybe they don't need incentives, but maybe they do.
Yes, Doug?
I understand the desire to create affordable units, but I feel like it's just a huge barrier to property rights and to people actually taking advantage of using the bylaw. And, it's going to be a good discussion. We'll have to discuss the reasons for our ideas, but it's just, not too many people want to have that encumbrance on their property.
I believe the reason why we don't have it is because we have that kind of restrictions in our existing bylaw, and that's what I'm in favor of trying to remove, so we have to have further discussion on this.
And I would think that the market might dictate that too. I mean, if you've got a 450 square foot house, you're not going to really be able to, or a unit, be able to rent it out for $2,000 a month.
I would like to see what Brian can come up with on some design guidelines that other communities have used.
We'll get into what you can do and can't do with regards to single-family dwellings.
Right.
So. We're done.
Yes, Paul?
I think Mr. Galasso raises some very interesting points here, and I agree with the first and third. I'm a little concerned with the second one. We do have a item here that says the apartment should be constructed so it's reasonably feasible, that the appearance remains that of a single-family resident. If you start putting an architect in there and slowing the process down, I think you may create a milestone to you, a hindrance for doing this. I think it's written that you need
We
to.
shouldn't, be discussing, debating what a public comment was, you know what I mean, one way or the other. This is,
Well, I'm not debating. I think he raises some very good
I'm
points.
just saying, well, we shouldn't be commenting on that at this point. I don't think it's right.
We're done. I wanted to, the item's been brought up, and we'll be bringing it forward again. That's, you're right, it'll be done at the right time.
Well, but this isn't a public hearing.
No, it's a discussion.
Right. This is a discussion.
We allowed some comment on.
We get into a little form-based stuff for you, what you can and can't do with your zoning under Massachusetts and incentives and whatnot. Let's stick right now, keep your focus on what you do as a planning board, and looking at the zoning bylaw. Right, we'll try to bring those other issues in at the appropriate time. Right now, we're focused on what's in your zoning bylaw, and what's good and what's bad and what needs to be changed.
All right. We'll be bringing this back up again.
Thank you.
In the future, hopefully next week. And, we've made a commitment to keep this on the agenda until we have it drafted, and then that gets back on the agenda. So I encourage everyone who's interested in this to pay attention to this. This is the time we're working on it right now. Okay. Next item for discussion is the transportation element recommendation. And Pat has some issues or discussion here.
Okay, I asked that this be put on our agenda because I felt very strongly that the committee of three did a lot of work on this, and yet we had a 45-minute discussion with the joint meeting with the selectmen. I understand why, and I felt that it was not sufficiently discussed, and the mind under the goal with the change that was brought about in the wording, that made it clearer. But we very strongly felt that the second policy being cut out should not have been cut out. The institutionalize a budget process to provide for the full costing, pricing needs of the transportation infrastructure. And I think they didn't really understand what we were trying to achieve there, and we didn't have time for a full discussion. We also didn't have the action items as we normally do to bring into that discussion. So the point of bringing it to our meeting is that I don't know how you all feel about this, but I would like to ask the selectmen, instead of bringing the changes into town meeting, that they recommend indefinite postponement to this article and give more time for a longer meeting with them, a joint meeting, so that it can be more fully discussed.
You know that I'm in favor of that.
I know you are, Bob.
Just a quick mention, though, it says on our sheets here, goal for the housing element should be transportation element.
Yeah, right.
And I want to get back to that goal. We went back and forth, as you guys know, we struggle over the words on a lot of these to try and make the goals as concise and as broad reaching as they possibly can. And we thought that freedom was a great word to use for the reasons that I spoke about at our joint meeting, that if you live in an area, you should have the freedom to walk, bike, freedom for public transportation. It should be a freedom that you enjoy, no matter what area in town you live in, and the choice, and that choice. So to strike the word freedom, and even though it was changed to other things, I still am in favor of the word freedom, because that's what it's really about. And when it was stopped at the word transportation, and freedom was cut out, I think it lost the flavor of what this goal is all about.
I think the issue here, well, one of the issues here is we've had such a difficult time in getting meetings with the selectmen that we don't have a discussion with them at a joint meeting. We're only to the point where we're actually presenting the element for a one-time shot, and so they come in wholesale and change it. That really should have been done in a prior meeting where we had their input, discussion, and crafted an element that incorporated their thoughts and ours, and not done at the last minute, just before the warrant.
Well, no, it's not, it's already on the
Even
warrant.
after the
I know, but that's what we
After
should.
the
No,
warrant.
it's afterwards. So we shouldn't, I'm suggesting that if we can't get to them before the warrant articles, have a joint meeting, that we automatically do not bring it forward until we've had the time to discussion, because we just end up with chop suey.
Well, I personally think it's embarrassing to both boards that they feel they have to so strongly amend it, and it doesn't reflect well on us when there's so much amendment, because there's been no discussion. Sufficient discussion, I should say.
Ken?
Well, for them to just delete that, the policy of the transportation, the policies for the transportation element shouldn't be just two.
Right.
It's too valuable of a thing, so I am actually in agreement with you in indefinite postponement, so we can relook at this and figure out what it should say then, because they just wholesale chopped away.
Ralph?
Well, it seems disappointing that after you put in all of this time with our subcommittee working on the local comprehensive plan, that we can't move it forward. But if we feel as though we need more time with the Board of Selectmen on articles such as this, it seems to me as though workshops are the place to do it. And they suggested a workshop for us coming up in December.
Yep, yes.
And I doubt if the agenda on that has been settled yet. It would be after town meeting, but maybe we could put it on the agenda so that it doesn't go any farther than being brought up in spring town meeting.
Ken?
Did you make a motion? Or?
No,
No,
no
there is
motion,
no
this is
motion.
this is a discussion, it's their article, so, they're,
But I can move that the planning board request that the Board of Selectmen recommends indefinite postponement on this article in the warrant.
And I would second that.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Moving on. General correspondence, there is a letter here. Where We received a letter from Amen Law Firm. Please, to Brian, please accept this letter on behalf of the applicant to extend the time to which the decision is to be filed on the preliminary plan until October 14th, 2015.
For what?
This is for the Falmouth Woods at Falmouth, AKA Ballymead issue. Anybody?
How long does that extend it? 2 weeks?
We would ask to October the 14th, I think it's best.
Okay.
That gives you the meeting of the 6th and the 13th, if needed to discuss and vote.
You okay with that? Somebody?
Need a motion?
Need a motion?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a motion.
I'll move that we grant the extension requested by Mr. Ahmet concerning, who is it again?
FWG LLC.
That FWG LLC to October 14th?
14th.
I would second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Okay. The next meeting, Brian, there is something missing. In the future, I thought we're going to keep future agenda items on the agenda all the time. Can we try to do that? I think we'd like to do that. But the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 6th.
Yeah, next week? That's next week, isn't it?
Next week, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be meeting every week for the next week.
Ralph?
Yeah, I asked Jim before the meeting if we could always have future agenda items as an agenda item. And I had something that I wanted to say, and I will just briefly bring it up under the next meeting. I would like to discuss the proposal that the Board of Selectmen presented to us the other night about creating a new community development director.
Okay.
We talked about the last element, but we had a discussion on a site visit to that area in Ballymead, and we need to make closure on that.
That will be addressed at the appropriate time. You're right. I agree with you. It'll be done at the appropriate time. Ken, you all set?
I was just going to comment, that's okay.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.